Welcome to the Her Empowered Divorce Live Show. I'm your host, Beverly Price. With my 30 years of divorce coaching experience, I fully prepare you for the critical decisions that will impact the rest of your life. Through this show, you'll gain valuable insights on all aspects of divorce. With expert guests, practical advice, actionable tips, and inspiring conversations, we'll explore how to master your divorce and emerge stronger on the other side. You don't have to face this alone. Let's start this journey together and create a better future. So, without further ado, let's get started. With over 50% of first marriages ending in divorce, the question we should ask is how many of them are civil and how many of them are hostile? Most people think of divorce as a fight or something you have to win, but there is so much opportunity to experience a divorce where the parties get along for the good of the relationship and the good of co parenting. So, how can this happen? Today, I'm asking that question of my guest, Gabrielle Hartley, of Better Apart Online Mediation. Gabrielle is a divorce attorney, author, and nationally recognized online mediator. Hi, Gabrielle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Awesome. I think you're the best person to talk to about how to use your power to have the best divorce possible. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and also the books you've written?
Sure. Thanks, Beverly. So I grew up with parents who divorced, and they divorced actually really well in the 80s when that was not really common.
Wow.
Yeah, they and I remember it. When we look back on things, oftentimes it's very rose colored. And I will say that
Hmm.
I remember that it's not that it was easy. I can remember my parents fighting, but they always put my brother and me at the forefront. And then when I went to law school, I thought, oh, I'm not even going to take family law. I'm like so done with this topic. But it was required. I took family law. I used my one pass fail. I took like corporate finance in third grade. I was like, and then I wound up a few years after law school, clerking for a judge who's now the top matrimonial court judge in the state of New York. And when I worked for
Wow.
him, I helped to bring to resolution over 800 trial ready, high conflict divorces. And during that time, I realized that the divorce process is really set up for any kind of, it's like a criminal case or a court case. It's not
Right.
really designed for families. And I was taken aback, and I worked for him for a number of years, and then I opened my own practice, and I went into court, and I also had a mediation practice, and I would have client upon client, day in, day out, sitting across from me, feeling alone, feeling stuck, and in this sort of web that the divorce process sort of throws you into, right, for better or for worse. And it really, the way that the process goes tends to escalate and inflame rather than to dial back, and it makes you feel worse instead of better. And it's not like the divorce isn't bad enough, right? So,
Gotcha.
so I decided, actually, when Gwyneth Paltrow announced that she had a conscious uncoupling, I looked at my husband and I said, I'm going to write the book that she's going to endorse. And I did. And that's how, when I wrote Better Apart, I have a cover endorsement from Gwyneth. And basically, Better Apart was designed by me, with my co-author, Elena, to be sort of a companion for you when you're going through a divorce and you feel alone. It's designed so that you can open it up to any page when you can't really concentrate because of all the swirl of all the crap that you're dealing with. Um,
Hmm.
and to find a way to settle, right? And to always put yourself at the front, at the center, while taking into account what legacy you want to leave for your children. How do you want to look back at your own marriage in 5 years? What's the most positive way for yourself? Not because you want to like hold the other person up high, but so that you can look on your own life, not in
Right.
the person, right? And so I wrote Better Apart. And then really the secret to getting along is kind of the prequel, even though I wrote it second to Better Apart. The secret to getting along takes you on the journey of like how to actually unravel the conflict. So Better Apart
Mm.
is about yourself and how to start reframing how you're looking at things through peace, respect, clarity, forgiveness, and patience. And The Secret to Getting Along gives a 3-step approach to look at conflict differently so that you can actually start to find possibilities where you feel totally stuck. So sorry, I just rambled on for so long, Beverly.
No, I love it. I love it. I think I highly recommend both her books to my clients. So I recommend them to anyone in the audience. I think there's so much need for information. I like to say that knowledge is power in divorce. And the more educated you become, the more active participant you can be in your divorce, as opposed to kind of throwing up your hands and being an observer in your divorce and expecting your attorney to do everything for you. So I think it's right on
You
target.
can have a lot of power. You may not realize it because you may feel powerless in the divorce, but actually more people can do mediation than believe they can do mediation, especially with the online platform, because you don't have to be in the same room. If there's
Right.
actual domestic abuse, that's a different situation. But if you're dealing with someone who you think is a narcissist, you feel like just isn't listening, you feel like is sort of taking over all the time. If you have somebody such as myself, like that's what I do with people, you can self-advocate and reach a resolution that is not being from the top down. When I worked for the judge, he used to always say, "You don't want this stranger in black robes deciding your life." And
Exactly.
it's so
I think so many people think that the judge is going to hear what they have to say and side with them, when the judge is really all about kind of enforcing the legal rules. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and also there's so much gray in the rules. There's so much variation of what a judge might do or say. The judge is just a person, right? If it were that easy to just enforce the rules, you wouldn't even need a judge, right? You would just put it into a computer and it would spit out like,
Right.
AI can't solve your divorce for you, right? Like,
Right.
really, unless you're with someone who is completely impossible, not just for you to deal with, but for anybody to deal with, mediation, or at the very least collaborative law, is available to you, even if you don't think it can work. It's just you both need to want to maintain control of your own life. If that's the only thing you agree on, that's enough. Because once you put it in the hands of the court, you don't know what the judge is going to think. You literally have no idea. The judge could just not like you. The judge could might remind the judge of someone else that he she didn't like or respect, or someone who wronged them, or they might just have a different worldview. It doesn't, maybe saying like you is not the right way to put it, but they might just not see things the way that you do. And it's really hard to punch up when you're in a one down position. But if you come to the table just thinking, okay, we're going to solve these problems, we're going to look at this differently, we're going to find the win-win, then you're keeping control of the situation for yourself,
Absolutely.
for your family, and for your own personal legacy.
Now, you mentioned domestic abuse. That's a topic I'm passionate about, being a survivor myself. What about domestic abuse and mediation? I've heard a lot of different opinions on that.
So conventionally, one would say you cannot mediate abuse. And it is true, you cannot mediate. Abuse is abuse. And if you're being physically abused, emotionally abused in a way that goes over a bar, if you've spoken with counsel, if you need to get an order of protection or whatever they call it in your jurisdiction, please know that I am in no way, shape, or form telling you to mediate that away. Okay. I just want to say that as a preemptive statement about what I'm now going to say.
Right.
And I don't have statistics on this, but I have heard that sometimes getting that order of protection can cause more harm, because that can fuel the fire further. And once you have that order of protection, you can't go to mediation potentially unless you do a carve out for online mediation, because that other person would be violating the order if they went to mediation, right?
What's a carve out?
Oh, thank you. So you might have, So when you get your order of protection, it might be a stay away order, meaning you can't go within a certain distance from you. They can't contact you. Maybe they can't go near your workplace. Maybe they can't go near your kids. A carve out would specify no contact unless on an online divorce mediation platform that is primarily using breakout rooms or whatever, like something very specific. Or let's say not for mediation, but just in general, you both want to go to a kid's performance and you're not deathly afraid of this person, but they just, they're overbearing. You got your order of protection, but now time has passed, things have cooled down. You still want that order of protection, but you might be able to go back to court and release it for a narrow purpose.
Gotcha. What's the difference? You mentioned collaborative. What's the difference between mediation and collaborative, and when would you recommend one or the other?
Great. So, excuse me. So collaborative law is where you have two lawyers who are agreeing contractually not to go to court. And the collaborative process is really supposed to have a whole team of lawyers. I mean, professionals, lawyer, a therapist, a financial person, maybe a coach such as yourself, all working together to help the parties arrive at a resolution. And the thing about collaborative law is that the rules of evidence don't apply. And it is a structure that is really good if for whatever set of reasons you really want it to be very much lawyer led, right? And but you go to court. The downside of collaborative law is you can spend a lot of time and a lot of money with two lawyers, and then if it breaks apart, you cannot use those lawyers to go to court because it's contractual.
You have to start
all over. Mediation, and in Better Apart, I really go into this pretty deeply. Mediation, you don't necessarily need a lawyer if the mediator is a lawyer in the state where you're mediating, right? People work with me all over the country, and I'm only licensed in Massachusetts and New York. So if you're working with me and you live in Oklahoma or South Carolina or whatever, you need to have your own lawyer to draw things up and to give you legal advice through the process. But mediation is where a third party neutral is helping you and your spouse to literally guide your own way toward a resolution that's mutually beneficial and supportive of your future needs and your future life, as well as your ex's, and if you have any children, theirs. Mediation, as I talk about in Better Apart, for many people, you're going to want to have a lawyer that you're consulting with on the side, someone who's mediation friendly, somebody who's not going to take each little argument and run with it and amp things up and escalate the fight. Right. You have to be very careful about that. But with mediation, you and your ex remain in control. Sometimes the lawyers come into mediation. That would be an active attorney-assisted mediation process. And sometimes the lawyers just come in at the very end. So it really depends on you and what works for your family in your particular situation. And it's really case by case.
Gotcha. What makes a good mediator?
So it really depends on what you need, right? Like not all people are going to resonate with one particular person. A mediator really has to listen a lot and listen for the colloquy, meaning the conversations that aren't necessarily at the heart of the matter, because that's where the meat of the resolution lies, right? So the underlying, and that's really what the secret to getting along is about. The underlying root worry is if you find a mediator who can help you to solve your underlying need, like that deep belly need, the fear, the anxiety. Once you satisfy that, then everything else falls into place. And someone who can help you understand one another's needs, that's really going to help you also. So, and it really has to be someone who is very intuitive, and they may have opinions, but they're not judgmental. They're not going to put their judgment. You can ask them what do you think? But they shouldn't be telling you that won't work, that won't work. This is really a you-led process. Now, a mediator may have, as I have experience for over 25 years doing this, obviously it's going to be easier for me to come up with a various, array of parenting plans or financial resolutions. That why would you be able to think of that? Even if it's your second or third divorce, this is my like 4,000th divorce, right? So,
Right.
so the mediator may be able to offer you some solutions, but you have to be careful of solutions versus telling you what to do in a way that is taking away your autonomy, which is the reason you're in mediation in the first place.
So when you might have mediation where you have an attorney for each person involved, whether it's in person or through Zoom and breakout rooms, do the attorneys do the negotiation, or do the two parties still do the negotiation, or is there a mixture?
So that is a really great point. There tends to be a mixture, but mediation savvy attorneys will allow the parties to do most of the talking. Typically, I prefer to have lawyers in the room when a case has already gone to court and it's very, very adversarial and people are really stuck in their position. So sometimes I'll get hired, on the eve of trial. People have been fighting for 3 years. They've already spent their $190,000 each, and they come in and they want help resolving things because the lawyers, even when they are litigators, they understand and have a better bird's eye view than the parties, and they can sort of help the parties help themselves. That's when it's good to have a lawyer. It's also good to have a lawyer in the room if you are just way too anxious to ever speak up, right?
Okay.
Because content has to come out of your mouth. Now, that said, like if I am perceiving that someone's having a hard time speaking up for themselves, I may go into a Zoom room and get the person to articulate to me what they want and then coach and encourage them to say those things in the room. So it's very active in that regard. And sometimes I'm contacted by the more vocal parties saying, I really want to go to mediation, but my husband or wife thinks that I'm going to steamroller them. Can you help them while you help us arrive at a resolution? So I'm not serving as an attorney. I'm just helping to elevate them so that they feel strong enough to self-advocate.
Who should select the mediator? Is it the one spouse? Is it both? Is it one of their attorneys? How does that work?
So it's really important that both parties feel comfortable. And for that reason, if you go onto my site to book a conference, it says right in the Calendly link, it is highly preferred that both parties are present because really mediation is not going to work if there's not a two-party buy-in. And
Gotcha.
And so, it may be that one party, gets a recommendation from whomever, from a podcast such as this. They read a book, they have a friend, their lawyer gives them the name. But if you go to mediation with your husband or wife or partner, and you're not comfortable, don't use that mediator because Beverly and I were talking about this before we came on. Everyone has a different voice and it's not like a slam on the mediator or on you if you're not connecting. Everybody has a different energy, and that's not bad or good. It just is.
Now, in a lot of people that think about going into court think that, oh, that judge is going to read my stuff or hear my stuff and side with me and it's going to be great. Do people think that about mediation too, that the mediator's just going to instantly be on their side and that kind of thing?
I think if you ask 100 mediators, they may give you 100 different answers. I don't actually think so. I think people have a lot of anxiety about that. People will say, she's so charming, he's so charming. But you have to understand, I mean, I can only speak for me, but I bet there are a lot of other mediators feel the same way, which is that we understand that personality and character are two different things. And we understand,
Okay.
right? Like I'm not confused by that. Somebody can be very charming, and I may enjoy having a conversation with them, but still, I'm aware that that's not who they are. That's just how they present. So going back a little while ago, you asked me like what to look for. You really need to look for someone who reads people well. I think that's really important, and someone who doesn't have an agenda, who just really wants to help you, help yourself, help elevate your family, help you to create a legacy for yourselves and for your children. You know, we do pass on how we feel to our kids,
Right.
right? And so if you say, "Oh, I can handle feeling bitter," well, maybe you can, but your son or daughter or, child may not have that same level of grit or may perceive things differently. So anyway, I think I got off track from what you're asking me, Beverly.
No, that's perfect because I tell my clients to think about 2 years from now, and you want to look back on your divorce and you want to feel good about the person you were.
That's right.
So how do you go through that being the kind of person you or your children would be proud of?
That's exactly right. Now, I'm going to say again, I completely earn my keep by mediating, right? But I am of counsel to a major firm in New York City because I understand, and so I have an attorney that I work with who litigates. I understand that you cannot mediate with everybody, right? Like sometimes there's
Right.
financial abuse, right? There's all kinds of abuse. If there's financial abuse happening, meaning you're kept in the dark, you have no idea what's going on, there's a lot of money, but you don't really know how much. If your soon to be ex won't disclose, you really can't mediate right up front. You may be able to mediate after an attorney helps you to do your discovery, but if you are working with someone who's really dishonest, you're going to do yourself a disservice. Now, on the flip side, you may have somebody who is violent, right? And you might say, I just need to get away from this person. And I really don't care. I know we might have, X 100,000 or $1 million, but I'll take, a quarter instead of the half because my safety comes
Right.
first. Now, a lawyer is not going to let you do that. That would be malpractice, right? But if you come to a mediator, like if I were that person's mediator, I would certainly require that they go to a lawyer first, and because a judge is going to say, "Did you review the agreement, etc." But in mediation, you have the ability to sort of fade away into the sunset and live your happy life away from this person who is trying to destroy you.
So in mediation, is this true that you can come to whatever agreement you want versus in court, it's going to go by legal rules?
Yes. And I'm saying that with an asterisk because every jurisdiction, when I say jurisdiction, I mean every state. And then in the larger states, there's many jurisdictions within a state. They're going to have their own take on that. So it may be that the agreement has to be deemed fair and reasonable by the judge. Even in a state where that's the case, oftentimes the judge may just require that you go and have it reviewed by an attorney. Certain states require that financial disclosures are made in all cases. Other states do not. It's really a state by state basis. But generally speaking, when you're getting divorced through mediation, you do not have to do what the law, strictly speaking, requires. But I just want to reiterate what I said in the beginning, which is that the law has a lot of gray and there's a lot of latitude for the judge. So, what's fair and reasonable for Judge A may look different for Judge B. And the other thing is, if you're going to court, you're not going to get in and out within 3 or 6 months. Whereas if you come to mediation, the vast majority of my cases are finished in half a year, right? Some go for a year,
Gotcha.
but it's a slow train if you're going to court. That doesn't mean you should never go to court. Don't be afraid of court if it's necessary, really.
Right.
So I just want to say that again. There are instances where you at least have to start with litigation. You can always scale back.
Right. We're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor. Many of us have been taught to spend all our time, money, and energy investing in husbands, children, family, and others, but not ourselves. Divorce is not the time to do this. The next steps you will take will set the stage for your entire divorce and life after. I'm Beverly Price, the empowering divorce coach who guides women on their journey before, during, and after divorce. I help you prepare for what is to come, understand and navigate the process, come to terms with your emotions, and learn how to communicate for successful results. Also, to avoid the biggest and most costly divorce mistakes. With the right support and guidance, you can move through the process with knowledge, strength, and confidence. Schedule a free consultation with me at herempowereddivorce.com. Let's journey to the other side of divorce together. And let's get back to the show. Now we're back with Gabrielle Hartley, who is an amazing, amazing mediator, online mediator. And I had a couple of questions. There's so many questions that came up while you're talking. Do people have rights in mediation? Like, if something's getting testy, can they ask for a break? Can they say, I'm done for the day? I'm tired. How does all that work? And do you also recommend full day mediation or part day mediation?
So for divorce, I'm going to start with your last question. I know
Okay.
some states may require a full day. I think that's way too much. I think, 4 hours is probably a maximum in one day. It's a lot to process. You don't want to be making decisions that are going to impact your whole life when you're feeling under stress, under pressure. Maybe if you did a 3-hour session in the morning and a 3-hour session in the afternoon, you could stretch it out to 6. But I think beyond 6 would be really too much. My standard meeting, I do 1.5-hour meetings. I meet with my clients weekly or biweekly until it's done, depending on what they choose to do. In terms of rights, you are not in mediation. There are ground rules, and those will be established with your mediator right up front in a pre-session potentially. It should be, you should understand what the rules are, but you're never waiving your rights in mediation, right? In mediation, you always have your rights. You have total freedom. If you want to leave in the middle of a meeting, I would suggest that in the beginning of the meeting, you say, I'm feeling kind of tired today. I'm not sure if I can stay for this whole session because it's just a lot and I'm not my best, but I'll try to do it. But if I leave, please don't think I'm being rude. Do your best not to say things that you can't unsay, right? Because it'll right? Because you always want to come off as, you want the best parts of your personality to come through, right? Remember, we're talking about personality.
Right.
Now, like, one thing in mediation that's very destructive is to threaten going to court or going to trial. That's very destructive, and it erodes the mutual trust within the mediation session. But generally, taking breaks is encouraged. I offer people breaks right up front. And then if someone seems tired, I might say, let's do some rooms. The other person, this person, your husband looks, like he can handle it right now. Why don't you take a walk, or vice versa? Get a glass of water, take 15 minutes, take care of yourself, and come back when you feel a little bit more fresh. In some cases, people are feeling overwhelmed with decisions and they might want to touch base with their lawyer in the middle of the mediation. And if that happens, what I would normally do is beforehand, before the session, let both people know that they have the ability to do that. Ask one another if they're both comfortable with that. And so long as they're both comfortable, that is also an option during a mediation. So it's your process, it's your life. And we mediators are here to support you and get you to the best possible outcome. Having worked for a judge for a number of years and having, I am a divorce attorney and seeing so many agreements filled with agreements to agree, filled with gray, I know that it's really important that we address hard issues now and that we paper them so that they are enforceable unequivocally.
Gotcha. Do you ever involve other individuals in the mediation, whether they're just an observer or whether they're a participant, such as a certified divorce financial analyst, a divorce coach, anybody like that? Are they involved?
So absolutely. We were talking before about collaborative law and how that there's third parties involved. They don't typically come in the room, although sometimes the divorce financial analyst might come in the room just to like explain things. If we have one neutral, we might have that happen. But typically, the way I work is on a flat fee, and that would include me having conversations with these people outside the room. So I'm digesting and getting the same information that the participants in the process are getting. Divorce coaches, very many of my clients will use one. They're typically not, again, they're not in the room, but they are there, and everybody understands that it's sort of a team. It's a collaborative mediation process, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Let's see. You mentioned discovery before. What is discovery, and what's the difference between discovery and a subpoena?
Okay, so a subpoena is the method through which you get documents that are not being voluntarily provided by the other person or by an institution like a bank. Discovery is your right to get the underlying documents that prove whatever your ex is saying. So if it's a financial issue and they say, "Oh, I've got $100,000 in the bank," but they've got $10 million in the bank, you're like, "Show me the records," right? Or if they fill out a financial form and you don't believe what's in it. And in some states, it's required that a certain amount of usually it's like 3 years worth of documents. You want to be able to see, has money been moved around? Is anybody, engaging in any shenanigans? Is your family money being spent on non-family people behind your back? Is there a gambling issue? Is there wasteful dissipation of assets going on? I mean, I don't mean to throw all these legal terms out, just to say there's a lot to consider. And while it is not essential that you have a lawyer mediator, I do personally lean toward lawyer mediators, even if they're not a lawyer in your state, just because they're going to know all of the things that are going to potentially arise. It could also be a social worker mediator who has been in the field for a really long time, or it's just a trained mediator who's been in the field for a really long time, who has worked closely with divorce lawyers over a period of time. But there are so many issues to consider. And again, making things hard now, answering all those hard questions and coming up with specific agreements in the present is going to serve you and your family for a long time, so that you can truly be better apart and get along in a way that is the most supportive.
So discovery is asking for it, and then a subpoena is legally requiring you to do it. Is that?
Yes. Discovery is just the process of exchanging documents. A subpoena is, I need the medical records. I'm not going to give them. Well, then subpoena the hospital. So you send a document to the hospital, and they have to provide the records.
Can you subpoena if you're in mediation versus if you're going to court?
To do a subpoena, it's a legal document, which you may be able to provide per se, but if there's an institution that won't provide you something, you may have to subpoena it anyway, even if it's like a document for you personally.
Right.
But typically in a straight mediation session, meaning you guys are agreeing that you want to get divorced and you are not in court. Usually there's just open discovery between each other. Another way to say discovery is just exchange of records. That's like a regular person's way to say it, right? Like just showing each other everything you have, everything you owe. Here's my credit cards. Here's my banking records. Here's my earning statements, etc.
And is mediation private?
Yes.
Okay.
So mediation, that's something that's very appealing to a lot of people also. It's behind closed doors. What happens in mediation stays in mediation. All of your personal information is not out there. all of your financial information. There's more limitations around it. Some states do require full disclosure, but you may be able to have that impounded. If you are a public figure or married to a public figure, or even if you're like a teacher, which is not a public figure, but you're like semi-public because you're working with children, mediation is really the best because you can keep your private life private. So that's something else that's really nice about mediation. The mediator cannot be called in to be a witness if you later go to trial, and things that happen within the mediation are not open for discussion at trial, because that would impair the ability to speak freely in the mediation session. And that's really what we want. We want to get people talking.
How does somebody, we step back to the whole concept of getting along to help you with your divorce. How can someone keep their divorce from spinning out of control?
So de-escalating is really the best way to do it. And to do that, I mean, the secret to getting along, I'll just really briefly tell you, it's like a 3-step thing. The goal is, so it's the yes method, right? And as I talked about in the very beginning when we were first talking, the emotional story, the root cause, the pain point, that's where all the solutions are. But we never get there because we've got these destructive behaviors. The other person has destructive behaviors, and we are so antagonized within ourselves. Our central nervous systems are all out of whack. We're just not getting to like, what do we both really need, right? And that's where all the solutions are. So the S, so your role is the Y, the emotional story is the E, and S is for shelving heated conversations. And that means for yourself as well. So when you're finding that you're getting really upset, you can feel your heart rate, you can feel like your head is starting to hurt, or your stomach's hurting, however you somatically respond, or you're starting to act in a way that you're like, ooh, why am I doing that? Take a break. Put yourself in a timeout, go for a walk, talk to a friend, have a cup of coffee, look at a magazine, watch a show, whatever. Distract yourself, let your brain calm down, cool off, talk to someone about this. And then ask yourself, okay, what's really going on here for me? And then ask yourself, what is really going on here for this other person beyond that they're a narcissist, a jerk, a blah, blah, blah. What's their fear? What do they want? What do they need? And when you get there, you can really de-escalate. You can't say you need such and such, but you can say, can we talk about this and talk about how you feel? Talk about, what your goals are in a higher level, in an emotional level. You're more likely to come up with a resolution, and you're not going to get the other person to feel blamed and attacked. And these same skills are useful at the Thanksgiving dinner table, right? Like with your
right,
or at work. These are all things, always understanding your role. And there are 5 behavioral tendencies that we all have that make it worse. I'm just going to name them right now, really briefly for you.
Okay.
So maybe jot these down if you're listening. 5 destructive behaviors we all do when we're upset. And I name them because you can catch yourself doing them and say, do you catastrophize? Do you say, oh my gosh, you start thinking like all the worst things? Do you minimize, right? Oh, it's no big deal. And the other person feels totally invalidated because you're not really hearing them and you're not really addressing things. Do you bury your head in the sand, right? Are you that ostrich? Are you a steamroller? Are you controlling your own emotions by telling people, okay, we can do this, we can do that, right? A lot of people do that. And then the person who buries their head in the sand feels controlled, but they're not really being controlled, right? And I know we're about to finish our time together. The 5th behavioral tendency that we do is we stir the pot, we deflect, we make things worse inadvertently by amping things up, by bringing up something else without ever resolving that first issue.
Wow. Gabrielle, thank you so much for being my guest today. And to our listeners, Gabrielle is offering a special promo rate if you mention this show, a promo rate for her online mediation until January 1st. And that information will be in the show notes. So thank you again, Gabrielle. This has been so enlightening.
Great to talk to you, Beverly, and thank you.
To my audience, thank you for being with Gabrielle and myself on this episode of Her Empowered Divorce Live. All of Gabrielle's contact information will be available in the show notes along with mine. And all the episodes can be found at herempowereddivorce.com on the live page or on the YouTube channel for WGSN. Did I get that right? I want to make sure I get the call letters right. All in the show notes. You can also watch the video on theirs. Please share this story with your friends so we can reach out and help as many women as possible. Remember, knowledge is power in divorce. Join me on our next episode where I'll be diving deeper into what other professionals can share to help you in your separation and divorce journey. You can find more information about my divorce coaching at herempowereddivorce.com. You can also find a free ebook if you're contemplating divorce at herempowereddivorce.com/contemplating-divorce. If you're interested, schedule an online free consultation with me there. I'm proud to share that I am now a part of the Divorce Coalition, a united front aiming to break the silence, break the cycle. Our mission is to bring understanding, healing, and resilience to the forefront, ending the cycle of abuse one survivor at a time. To learn more, go to divorcecoalition.com. Thank you and have a nice day.